All right, good evening, Bitcoiners and BIP110 supporters, or Nazis, or whatever it is. I've spoken about this sort of stuff plenty of times before, and I didn't want to bring up politics or anything like that, but there's one thing I want to talk about with many people, which is why I'm staying on the core side. I don't see this thing succeeding at all. This BIP110 fork, it is too rushed. They're saying that they were talking about doing this proposal back in October 2025, but the implementations really only have been dropping in you know, March, April, May, so on and so forth. And only about 2 weeks ago or something like that, it actually finally made it into the proper NOTS latest version. So it's certainly rushed. And as you can see by Jamison Slop's website here, he's got here, and I'll leave all this in the comments. He's got a countdown for until the next 4,196 blocks counts down for the period when NOTS will potentially start rejecting core-based core-based blocks, right? So there's no doubt that no matter what the case is, that BIP110 nodes will fork off the main chain because, as soon as the actual fork happens, Core may end up solving a block that probably has some sort of runes in it or has some sort of ordinals in it. And I mean, I'm just saying right now, I was never a big supporter of any runes, and I was never a supporter of ordinals. I was really pissed off when they both turned up, but they managed to make these transactions happen, and it somehow follows the rules. So if it follows the rules, then what do I have to say about it? And the truth of the matter is that the mempool has been doing fine, and they even introduced the subsat fees, and we are at subsat fee rates right now. We're not paying $20-$30 or whatever like that for regular transactions. It is in the subsats, so the costs are not that high. The blocks may be getting full, but when real transactions come in, I'm sure the fees on the real transactions will push some of those more junkier stuff out. Yes, Puss, I know you want to meow. So I've always felt that while these things are annoying, that ultimately fees will outweigh this sort of stuff. And the truth of the matter is someone who goes and mints a rune or an ordinal or whatever like that, they go out there and mint it, they sell it, the value drops out at the arse end. Their stupid picture ends up becoming worthless in about a year and a half because it's some stupid monkey, so it doesn't look any good, and the value is not worth it, and nobody wants to buy it. So everyone who spends and wastes their money on this sort of stuff ends up losing anyway. So the natural incentive for the markets to dry up is for people to not trade ordinals anymore. There probably are people who are still making them, but because there's a very poor floor to be able to support this sort of stuff, and because every ordinal is separate, not like a Bitcoin where any Bitcoin is the same value as each other. These ones are separate. So if you get a monkey which looks ugly and a monkey that looks good, the ugly one doesn't sell as the good one. Whereas if you put two Bitcoins side by side, they're both valued the same. So an ordinal has its own handicaps. So anyway, so we've got the death count here. So we've got 29 days and 3 hours until this remains. And of course, the Wicked Smart website has been monitoring the 55% activation height of knots nodes with this BIP110 activation thing in there, and it's been counting how many blocks have actually been compliant to 110. Right. So the first one, there was a 1 back in what do you call it? A signaling period. Block. The actual, it was like a 2016 block sort of period. So there was 1 that got solved, and then there was 0 on the next one, then 3, then 2, then 0, 0, then 7, 16, 9, and the current one is currently at 11. So, I mean, this one that's on 11, it could end up going, it could surpass the one that's at 16. I have no idea. We've still got some time to go. And might I add, Ocean coming out the other day and saying that anyone who's got an Ocean miner, they're going to split the ports into 2 different ports, and whoever remains on the original signaling port, this original port, will automatically default to signaling for BIP110. That's a backstab. I mean, if anything, they should signal for the default. They should be signaling for the attack chain, because I consider BIP110 to be an attack. So anyway, so looking at this sort of stuff, at the moment they've got 11 blocks solved out of 2016 blocks in this difficulty period. So what does this mean? And what is the one thing I tried to explain to some of the small events which I discussed with some people, and what I don't see anyone talk about online. I saw a guy's video talk about it yesterday, but I mean, he's like the first person apart from like Stefan Livera who actually talk about how the block times work. So I just did some very napkin style maths in this Excel document. And so what I basically tried to do is I just used the average 10-minute block time. And we know that block times don't always average at 10 minutes. So they could be 30 seconds, or they could be 20 minutes. We know this. But the average is always intended to be 10 minutes. That's how the difficulty adjustment works. It is dialed up or dialed down based on how much it deviates from the 10-minute blocks. So if we assume that, perfect scenario, we've got 10-minute blocks, everything solves at 10-minute blocks, then I basically tried to, reverse engineer the way that this is all going to come out. So a difficulty round, 2016 blocks, and if BIP110 has solved 16 in this thing as an example, I figured out the fraction. So it's 0.79% of the total amount of blocks being solved. So it's just under 1% of the amount of blocks that have been solved for this particular difficulty period. Now, when you reverse 0.79% into a multiple, so like into something that's greater than 1, it comes to a 126 multiple, right? So effectively, by only having less than 1%, you are timesing the amount of time you need to search for a block by 126 times. So it just increases the time period by 126. And this is all variable. So when you put a number where the 16 is up here, it will modify on the fly. So I might post this a couple of times over this next month of new. If I see new numbers, I'm going to post this screenshot. And so 126 times this, right? So this first line here in the grey, that's just the average block time. So every 10 minutes, every 600 seconds, it's 0.16 of an hour, and it's 0.0069 of a day, right? So the hash time for a single block to be solved on a BIP110 system if they only have 0.79% of the actual hash rate, right, equals 21 hours. 21 hours, right? So they could be mining one block every day and maybe get the odd one on occasion as well. If we consider that the amount of hash rate that's pointed at it right now has produced 16 blocks so far in a full difficulty session, it will take 21 hours for every block to be mined. Not 10, 21 hours, right? And there's another thing too. So the Coinbase maturity is 100 blocks. And mind you, at this point in time, if this does split, we don't know what the price of a BIP110 coin will cost. It's probably not going to cost, 60,000 US dollars. It could be worth like $60. We don't know. But the miners need to achieve 100 blocks in a row for them to actually be able to start moving their Coinbase reward, right? So the Coinbase reward won't move until 100 blocks has elapsed, which means it could take 2,100 hours before the first person can even collect their money, right? And that's 87 days. 87 days. So 87, that's about two and a half months. They would have to wait 2.5 months to get their first reward of 3.125 BTC Juniors, or BIP110 coins, or whatever the hell they're going to call it, right? And do they even have an exchange to be able to sell it on? That's what, they'll have 3 months to figure that out. They'll have 3 months to actually produce a market for it, to actually find out the price, if it's going to be worth $6, $60, or $600. But once you get that, imagine if it's only $600 and it's like 3.125. So we're talking about like, what's that, like $1,800, $2,000. So they have to wait 2.5 months for it just to get their first reward. It's the first reward ever, right? Because it's going to take 100 blocks from the split date. Now, the thing about this is they have to, if this is the amount of hash rate that they have, and if they stay consistent, and the people who are hashing continue to burn through their energy, like just trying to keep this chain moving, and if Luke doesn't swoop in and put some sort of like, difficulty adjustment, like a temporary adjustment system, so it dials it right down so the can move quicker, they could be on this heavy difficulty level for 1,764 days. That totals 4.8 years, right? So if nothing changes, if this just continues as it is with the current hash rate and doesn't go up, doesn't go down, and they don't sweep in there with some sort of new magic rule to go out there and twist the difficulty adjustment down, then they will have to continue to hash for 4.8 years before, and get this, the difficulty adjustment apparently can only go down like 50%. So that would mean that the 4.8 years would go down to like 2.5 years or something like that. It wouldn't go right down to one year. It wouldn't go down to like a month. It would have to go down, to like 2.5 years or something like that. And then you have to wait for 2.5 years for it to go down to like 1.25 years. And then another 1.25 years before it can go down to like 8 months or 7 months. The people could be waiting for years just to get this thing to even move. And that's the reason why Bitcoin Cash kind of moved quickly the way it did. It took 6 hours for them to mint their first block. But because they had forethought of having an adjustable difficulty assessment, right? they could dial it right down and dial it right up, dial it right down, dial it right up based on every single block that got mined. It would reassess the difficulty adjustment after each block that would get mined, and that would kind of quickly steady the ship really, really, so that they could start pumping about it, 15 or 20 minutes or something like that. But these ones are like 21 hours. And I don't think at this point in time, I don't think that Luke's pride will allow him to go out there and turn it into that, because then it pretty much comes to Bitcoin Cash then, doesn't it? If they've gone out there and modified that particular rule to go out there and make the difficulty adjustment dial up and dial down faster, then they're pretty much just forked off and they've got Bitcoin Cash. So, yeah, 4.8 years to downgrade the difficulty adjustment. This is why I try to tell people. This is why I know that it'll fail, because the truth of the matter is, if you're part of that 1% which is hashing, and you've been waiting for 21 hours for the first block to drop, I think you've already capitulated. You've already left, because you're thinking, I am losing time, I am losing money. People on the other side are gaining $200,000 worth in block rewards, and you're only waiting like 7 hours or something like that to get out, and then they've gone out there and they've minted and taken away their $150,000 or $200,000 that they need, depending on which currency you're working with. So without just finishing off this particular thing, I figured I would duplicate this particular chart and turn it into a core chart. So I've now flipped it into a legacy chain, right? And so I've now changed the system in a different way. So what I'm now doing, right, I've got difficulty around 2016 blocks. I've got the BIP 110 deduction of 16 blocks, and I've got core solves 2,000 blocks. So 16 blocks have been nicked away from core, and they've got the ratio of about 2,000 blocks themselves, and so their fraction is 99.2% of the actual hash rate. Now, they're multiple 1.008% times, right? And so their average block time goes from 10 minutes to 10 minutes and 8 seconds, right? Now, their maturity rate for 100 blocks for them to be able to actually spend their Coinbase rewards goes down to 16.8 hours. So just under 17 hours. So a person who's hashing core blocks will be able to get their maturity reward of 3.125 before BIP110 will even solve their first block. They'll be able, core will be able to actually move their coins to an OTC and get their money before BIP110 even gets their first block solved. And the difficulty adjustment will happen in 14.11 days. And the years is not even relevant down here, because obviously that's just tiny. So 14 days. Very, very similar to the way it is today. So as you can see, core is going to just keep flying through, and the people who are trying their hardest to go and, mint one block every 17 or 18 hours on the BIP110 chain, they're going to capitulate. Every 21 hours, they're going to capitulate, and they're going to say, you know what? It's not worth it. It was a dead project. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back over to core again, because at the moment I could have mined one full legacy chain block by now and been rewarded the original 3.125 Bitcoin and gone and cashed it in by now. So that's my statement. I may save this and put it in a link that someone can download, so you can go and play with it yourself. But yeah, there we go. So this is something that is the biggest problem for BIP110, and nobody talks about it. They're all busy talking about CSAM, and they're all talking about like filters and stuff like that. Filters don't matter. Filters don't matter because if 75% of the nodes are core nodes, that's that's like three core nodes to every one node of knots. So 3 core nodes will just divert the transactions around that knots node. You'll just do ring around the rosy. We'll just send it around you. So, I'm not trying to advocate for, putting ordinals on or anything like that. But what I'm trying to say is that the filters aren't going to work against it, because core nodes will just string it straight around you. We'll bypass you. Especially seeing as I think that I think the BIP 110 thing only was connecting to 2. I think someone said that they connect to like 16 BIP 110 peers and only 2 core peers by design. So I think they put that in there, which basically means that they're actually sticking cotton buds in their ears as well. They don't want to listen to core node blocks. They just want to hear themselves. So they're isolating themselves. They're painting themselves into a corner. Anyway, I'm not going to rant and rave anymore. I'll let it go. So enjoy this, and hopefully you'll be able to download this chart on a link, and I'll put the 2 websites in there too. Thanks for listening.